Hi, and welcome to the Tea with Intuitives podcast. I'm Melly, an Akashic reader, past life psychic, and channeling coach. Today, I am welcoming special guest Alice Autum Strange, who is an energy worker, witch, life coach, and psychic practitioner. She hosts the Magic in the Mind podcast, where she brings learning and personal experience together to explore psychology and spirituality. Alice has been working with energy for over 15 years and uses her gifts to bring real change into others' lives. As a former crisis counselor, she utilizes her experience with mental health and spirituality to teach and guide others holistically. Alice has an eclectic approach to her spirituality, leaning heavily on modern hedge druidry and eclectic paganism. Her mission is to help who she can through her unique experience and make a difference one person at a time. She offers life coaching, tarot and oracle card readings, witchcraft services, and dream interpretation, helping people connect to their spirit guides and ancestors. Alice, hello! Welcome!
Hi,
Hey,
it's so nice to
welcome to
be
the Tea with
here.
Intuitives. Nice to see you too. So, for those of you who don't know, Alice and I already know each other because I've been on her podcast, Magic and the Mind.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And that was such a wonderful episode.
Yes, it was really fun. And I wanted to chat with you again. And the thing is, I'm a fan of your podcast.
hmm
And I listened to your episodes about inner temples, so I'd like us to talk about that today. But before we go any further, this is Tea with Intuitive. So Alice, what tea are you drinking today?
Today I am drinking a sweet tangerine and orange with a little bit of black tea just to get my energy levels up there and ready for the podcast.
Wow, we are in sync. I have orange and spices, but no tea for me. It's just herbal
Oh,
tea.
okay.
But yeah, same for me. Yay!
Yay!
Woo-hoo.
We are on the same page.
Yeah. And Alice, you're going to talk a lot today. So while I'm asking questions now, it's going to be your time to drink your tea. Otherwise, I know when we're the interviewees, we don't get a lot of drinking time. So yeah, just keep that in mind. So I'd like to start with you. I'd like our listeners to get to know you, and just wondering, how did you become Alice Strange? How did magic come into your life? How did you develop your psychic senses?
Yeah, it's such a strange story actually. I was kind of just exploring the internet as a young teenager does. I was probably around 13 or 14, and I started reading a lot about energy work, but I didn't really understand what it was. I just understood that it made me feel good and, to like kind of commune with nature and connect to the elements and things like that. And I kind of just had what I realize now was a remembrance. I just knew. I kind of just had that in me. And it was very easy for me. And it was something I was kind of ashamed of for a very long time. I was like, oh, this is weird. This is not
Mm.
cool. I have to keep this secret. And as I grew up and realized this is something, this is what people do. Um, it really wasn't until just like 6 months ago I realized, like, oh, this was something I was born knowing how to do, and it was actually a really nice realization to have that it wasn't a weird, it wasn't a bad thing. It was just something that I had always known how to do. And so I made some friends that way when I was very young, and it's always helped me just like keep um, my practice very fresh.
Yeah,
It's kind of hard to explain, but I
community
did.
helps.
Yeah, it was the community, and I didn't really embrace it until just recently, these past 6 months or so. But it was a very special thing for me, and it really helped me get into witchcraft and energy work and spiritual lots of things because I just knew.
Wow. Yeah. So I see, if you are watching this on Spotify or YouTube, is that a broom in the background and a witch's
This
hat?
this is a staff actually. It's
Oh, okay.
just
I see
a nice
now.
little,
Yes.
yeah. No one
Wow.
ever asked me about this, but I always have it there. Just some feathers and a bone and some nice little, yeah. And that is a witch's hat, yes. I keep my stuff back there.
Cool. So I see the staff. Do you do any ceremonies or it's just for fun and
Um,
decoration?
it started out being just for fun and decoration, but I do meditate with my staff. I like to imbue it with certain energies. If it's like a special portal or like a significant, like the eclipses that happened recently, I'll sit and pre-eclipse, like charge it with a good intention, and then sit down and like be able to ground my energy with the staff when it's like a turbulent time, like an eclipse. Um, but it helps me ground and kind of stores a lot of magical energy for me.
Yeah, yeah, that's really wise. Did you just know? Because I know you just said like you found out you were born with knowledge, which, in my
Hmm.
opinion, as a past life psychic, I see it as a past life talent.
Oh, for sure.
So did you learn how to do this, or it was just your intuition?
I just kind of started doing it. And then
Wow.
later went and like researched it and saw if other people do the same, and they do. So it's just kind of,
Yeah.
again, another remembrance, another thing I just knew how to do.
Yeah, yeah. And what about inner temples?
Yeah.
Is it something that you always knew existed? Or maybe we should start by saying what inner temples is, because I'm guessing some people don't know what they are at all.
Right. So my definition of an inner temple, um, I would say it's a place in your mind that you can use to connect to subconscious levels of yourself, connect to astral realm, lots of things like that. But it's really a place inside yourself where you can connect deeper, and um, it can be made very intentionally. It should be made very intentionally, where you build with intention and purpose what you're hoping to get out of your inner temple. It's also called world building, or like um, there are lots of names for it, but just kind of an inner place where you can go to connect with guides or gods and goddesses, whatever you're into. And yeah, it can help with so many things, so many things.
Yeah, and I like that you mentioned that it needs to be intentional. You need to build your own inner temple. And for someone who would like to do that, to have that special place to connect to themselves and maybe other realms, where can they start? How do you start building? Is there a fixed imagery that you should use or not?
Right. So I tend to say the best way to go about it is to follow your intuition. Let yourself kind of, I always suggest going into a meditation because that's how I usually work
Mhm.
on my inner temples.
Mhm.
But even if you're not a very visual person, if you aren't visually skilled, if you can't visualize in your mind very well, there are ways around it. You can make paintings or drawings or digital layouts of like what your inner temple looks like, and that's one way to get around that visual aspect if you're not super skilled at coming up with vivid visuals. But I am the kind of person who is. So for me, I will go into a meditation and think about the purpose, think about the intention I want for a particular, like if you're starting with no inner temple at all, you can just say, okay, well, I want a space where I can connect to myself subconsciously, a space where I can tap into my inner self, my inner knowing, in other realms, and just kind of let your mind process that and really see what comes to you. Um, it can be hard not to go in with a preconceived notion, but it's best to just let what comes come and just let your intuition guide, I guess, is the most important part. Um, so for me, I have an inner temple that is just a large grassy clearing surrounded by forest. Um, and that's where I went to meet with one of my goddesses and guides
Mhm.
for the longest time. And I didn't really actually create that with much intention. It kind of just happened on its own. Um, just suddenly one day I slip into a meditation and I'm suddenly very deep in a meditation and I'm in this place, and that's not how it usually works. But now I've been able to take that experience and apply it to making new temples, new, to work with other guides and other goddesses and things like that.
Mhm.
Um, so sitting down and letting your mind just come where or go where it goes um, is a good way to start. But you need to keep in mind, you need to really know what you're aiming for when you start that. And I
Yeah.
talk a lot about how to begin the process in my previous podcast episode about world building and inner temples.
Right. And with what you're really explaining actually the Akashic records for me, because
Mm-hmm.
what I do when I channel the Akashic records for clients, I'm going to see their Akashic records differently. I mean, for someone, it's going to be a cave. For a lot of people, it's just like you, it's a clearing with a forest surrounding it. Sometimes it's by a riverbank. Sometimes it's like we are in space and stars everywhere. For me personally, it started out in a tree and
Mm-hmm.
there wasn't much detail there. And the more I would go into my Akashic records, the more details would come. So it was kind of,
Yes.
I was building, or maybe not building that world, but that world was revealing itself to me slowly. And I wasn't trying to control anything or build anything. So as you are saying, sometimes it just pops up for you. Now I just want to give a precision that um, your inner temple might not be your Akashic records. Like maybe
Right.
you are not saying an Akashic prayer to enter your Akashic records, but a lot of people who are strong intuitives just end up in their Akashic records without knowing it, because you don't necessarily need to have the prayer every time. It depends on people.
Right.
But when you are have good psychic skills, you just end up there without knowing it. So yeah, it's super interesting. And would you like to share the first steps that people can go through?
Sure. Yeah. So it's always good to have kind of like a moment to set your intention. Um, I am the kind of person who likes to meditate with a little bit of background music or noise or some kind of, even if it's just nature sounds.
Mhm.
So find what makes you most comfortable, what helps your intuition flow the best. And I would say, sit down and say, okay, I'm going to go into my inner temple and let your mind float. Let your mind kind of just, okay, well, I know it can be this or this or this. And let your mind just kind of drift around, feel out those different things until you find one that feels right. And, like you said, it can change and become more clear over time. And I find that to be very true. Even if you are intentionally building a space, um, it kind of reveals itself to you over time. And the more you come in and put energy into it and work to make your inner temple a solidified kind of thing, the more it's going to kind of take on a life of its own. And I think that's something that not enough people talk about when they talk about inner temples. They talk about doing the work and visualizing and very intentionally choosing what colors you want in each room of your inner temple and what intentions and different knickknacks or magical tools you want to put in a specific intention room in your inner temple. assuming that you have rooms and it's not just like a clearing or a forest or something. Um, but I feel like inner temples kind of take on a life of their own, but you have to trust it. You have to let it just take a life of its own. And at first, it might be a little awkward. It might not feel so smooth. And I think that's really okay to, find your setting and then just meditate in that area. Call in a guide, call in, ancestors or whoever it is you want to work with, and have your area. And I think it's less about intentional work and more about time and dedication and really just having energy spent in this place. I think that's really what makes it such a wonderful tool is once you've put so much energy and effort into it, you can slip right in there and just kind of fall in and things just come to you. It can be so effortless once you've like put the groundwork into it.
Right. And I like that you mentioned rooms, or if it's not inside, we can call them like sections.
Sure.
Could you please explain a little bit more about that?
Sure. Yeah. So one thing inner temples can be really good for is you can find specific, like, let's say I struggle with depression and I have a hard time being confident. I can build a confidence room or a passion room, or if it's a forest, maybe you visualize a tree with a door in it and you can open that door and step inside the tree and you're in a different section of the forest. And like, this is my room for confidence. And so in that room you have bright red colors. Maybe all the leaves on the trees are red, or maybe your walls are painted red. And when you step into that room, you feel the confidence. And you're not going to feel it immediately. Probably not. Maybe you might have something special in store for you, but usually you're going to have to like come into the room and channel that confident energy and really work to put that energy in that space. But after a while, after you've done that a few good times, when you go into your inner temple and go to the confidence area, you can step in and you're in those surroundings. It's a psychological trigger is really what it is, or maybe it's not depression and confidence. Maybe it's I struggle with focus, attention. Sorry. Maybe I struggle with my attention or my focus. And you can have a specific room where when you do feel focused and attentive, you can go into your space and put that energy in. So when you need help focusing on homework or whatever it is, if you're taking a class, if you need to work on a thing for your job, you can go into that space, channel that energy, and then come into your physical space with that underlying energy there. And a lot of people like to do magic in their inner temples, because if it's a inner temple, you can have any tools, anything that you need to do any kind of magic, any kind of herbs. You can have a garden in your inner temple, and grow whatever plants you want, and you can take different magical correspondences that you don't have in real life and use them to create spell crafting things in your internal world. And so that's not something I do a lot, but I do know a lot about it. There are just so many things. There are so many, the sky's the limit, really, because if you can imagine it, it can be real. So it's really amazing what all an inner temple can do for someone.
Yeah, it sounds to me that by magic, it's like you can do your own energy healings in your inner temple.
Yes, very much so. And like energy healing, if you're working to heal someone in the physical world, a really good place to start is going into your inner temple and focusing. Maybe you have a healing room or clearing or a section, and you can go into that space. And like I said, that psychological trigger, once you see your surroundings and feel that energy, you're immediately going to slip into the energy you're trying to really cultivate for that moment. So it's quite the sky's the limit.
Yeah, it's the power of the mind.
Exactly.
And Alice, I don't know if you get the same feeling with inner temples, but every time I'm thinking about Sherlock Holmes and his mind palace. And I know it's
Right.
different because Sherlock Holmes, he has his mind palace where he goes to reflect and make connections. So when you make a mind palace, it's like, okay, maybe it's a house. I enter this house and I see this knickknack, and this knickknack is my remembrance for, I don't know, this relationship that I had with this friend when I was in primary school. It can be
Yeah.
anything. So this is like he does it, but it's kind of the same principle. You create what you want there.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, you just mentioned magic in the inner temple. Would you
Mhm.
like to talk about how you work with magic in your day-to-day life?
Sure. For me, I do a lot of magic in my physical world. I'm kind of I'm very good at doing things in my mind, but it's more uh, real to me if I can do it in the physical world.
Mhm.
So I don't do a lot of magic in my inner temple, other than intention setting, things like that. But with inner temples, it can be really amazing to just step into a space and create what you want to create. Um, Doing spells and things like that in an inner temple has not been something I've spent a lot of time doing, but I've done some of, and it's really amazing. And when you're so tuned in to what's going on in your intuition, you will have some pretty incredible visual things, or maybe if you're more of an auditory person or whatever your clairs happen to be, um, in your inner temple you will have things happen that you didn't expect to happen, and it's because you're doing real magic in your subconscious, and it's quite amazing. um, and if that's something any of our viewers want to go and try and do, um, just be prepared for the unexpected. Very much just let all things go as they will, and let your mind just be free, because that's when the best stuff happens.
Yeah. And I also know that outside of inner temples, you personally practice druidry.
I do, yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Um, we talked about my staff. It's a very specific type of wood that's very sacred to me. So, I bring magic into my life in so many different ways. I have certain kinds of plants that are very special to me, certain kinds of um, herbs and oils, and like all the different correspondences you can have. Um, and I like to do a lot of like plant spirit work, where I will connect to the spirit of a plant, um, through consumption or use of the pieces of the plant or of an essential oil. Um, I grow a lot of my own plants, which is just a beautiful thing. If anyone has the ability to grow their own plants, I would highly encourage it, because you really are putting your blood, sweat, and tears into a very real living thing. And when you can make that connection, the plant almost is just more willing to work with you, more willing to help you.
Mm.
Um, and I think that's the biggest place my druidry comes in, is when I'm working with my plants and really um, fostering that relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. Wonderful. So you're obviously very psychic.
I would say so, yes. It's
Yeah.
not something that I've always been able to admit to myself, but yeah, I would say I'm a bit of a psychic.
Yeah. And you started working with people and helping people with your psychic gifts, right?
That is true, yes. Um, my biggest, I guess the thing I'm known most for is I do readings with people where I connect them to their spirit guides and their ancestors, and or if you have one or the other you prefer, I do both. But I will help people to learn ways to be able to connect to their spirit guides or their ancestors. And then from our meeting onward, I will give you tips to like keep that relationship going, what things to look out for, good ways to just grow that interaction and have those spirits there for you in your future. And so that's my biggest, what people are most interested in, I'll say, is connecting to their spirit guides and their ancestors, and really, I'll come through and give them the messages, the things that their guides have to say at that moment. But I really do like to help people so they can continue on in the future without having to come to me every couple weeks. I can just give them suggestions and tell them what to look out for. And I'm always there for people who've had readings and they say, "Oh, what do you think about this in the future?" If you need a little bit of help, a little boost, I'm open to helping people that way too. But yeah, that's the one that most people are interested in when I talk about the things that I offer.
Yeah. And what else do you offer?
I also do dream interpretation. That's one that people don't usually expect from me, but I've been able to intuitively read dreams my whole life. I don't know a time before that. So it's not that I've studied any kind of special interpretation language. It's just I just understand. I just know. And I think it has a lot to do with being able to connect to others, guides and ancestors and their goddesses and gods and whatever they work with. When I connect to a person's energy, I'm immediately drawn to that spiritual connection they have. So it's a very special gift that I'm so happy that I'm able to share with the world.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I mean, so many times we have weird dreams. We want to
Yeah.
know what they mean, especially when they are recurring dreams. We want to
Oh,
know what
yeah.
it means. So, and you say often, I just know, I just know. So clearly, you were born with strong claircognizant
Yes.
abilities. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And it's
That was
wonderful that you recognize that in yourself.
right. It took a while to recognize for sure. I for the longest time just had a lot of claircognizance, but didn't a little bit of clairsentience, but my other clairs were very non-existent. And the more I've just kind of, there was a time I went through a phase where I would, oh, I want to see things, spirit, I want to hear
Mhm.
things, and I would really try to cultivate that and work really hard, hours every single day to try and learn how to listen to spirit with my ears or with my eyes, and um, it really never got me anywhere until I said, you know what, it's just not working. So I'm just going to be happy with the clairs that I have. And within a few months after giving up on the chasing the dream, it all just kind of fell into place and it happened very rapidly. And now I see things, I hear things, I feel things all the time. All the time, I'm seeing and hearing things. And it's quite incredible what letting go of the resistance, without trying to control the outcome,
It was
how far you
exactly
can
the
go.
same process for me, exactly the same. And the thing is that when you have claircognizance, it means it's a clear knowing. So you're getting downloads of information and you just know. And it's the hardest clear to have in a way because it's easier when you say to someone, I see this, I hear
Hmm.
this. When it's claircognizance and clairsentience as well, it's like, well, I just know, or I feel this. And people are like, really? So, and it's hard when you kind of have that fear of your psychic abilities, that fear of judgment because of your abilities.
Yeah.
So you kind of want to prove yourself at the beginning, but you cannot when you have claircognizance and clairsentience. So as soon as
Yes.
you let's all go and you accept that you have it. It was the same for me. Boom, strong clairvoyance, strong clairaudience. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It is, it's kind of like you want it to be more real to you, you
Yes.
know, and once you just allow and just stop trying to force things, spirit comes through in amazing ways. And I mean, honestly, that's one of my biggest pieces of advice I give to people on the daily is just don't force it. You know, just let it happen the way it's going to happen and it'll all work out the way it's supposed to. I truly believe that.
Yeah, me too. Thank you, Alice, for coming on the Tea with Intuitives podcast. To get in touch with Alice, you can check out the show notes for all the links. And now to some news from Meliland. The Tarot Focus 2024 readings and the Akashic readings for January are all sold out. And my next availability is in February if you ever wish me to connect with your spirit team. During the rest of the month, I will be working on my next elemental activation, which will be a water healing with the water dragon. So make sure to subscribe to my newsletter to get the best deal on that when it launches. And this is it for me today. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening to the Tea with Intuitives podcast. If you have a question, you can send it at teawithintuitives@gmail.com or via Instagram or YouTube. If you are on Spotify, you can give us a rating and participate in our polls and share your stories there. If you are on Apple Podcasts, please give us a review and share it with us so we can give you a shout out. And if you're on YouTube, comment and give us a thumbs up. Okay, thanks everyone. Have a beautiful week. Bye.